Jeff, man, thank you so much for coming on the show here today. Glad I could finally get you on. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me, man. It's great to see you again. Well, I've been a strength coach now for almost 20 years and never a great athlete coming up. So just was very curious in regard to, how can I make this thing, this flesh vehicle, maybe work a little better? And in my sport of basketball is my sport of choice.
Yep.
And yeah, I went to Niagara College, just in the Niagara Falls area. I'm in the Southern Ontario region, just south of Toronto. And yeah, college was a walk-on in college, so I didn't get much playing time at all.
Yeah.
So for 2 years I did that. In my third year, I decided to opt out of playing and just buckle down in school. And really it was great. I just surrounded myself with students that were really smart.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't the smartest, right? So,
Right.
but I knew enough to know that I got to surround myself with the right people. And yeah, I just became really just hella curious in school and applied myself more so now that I wasn't a student athlete, and still have had a passion for basketball ever since. And it's cool to be blessed to be able to fuse my skill set and as a coach as a combination of a strength coach and a basketball coach.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
Talk to me. What originally led you to the weight room or like physical preparation? Like, however you think about it, like what was your introduction there? What maybe got you into this side of it?
Originally, it was probably just like, hey, man, build a little muscle here, show off for the girls. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yep.
But
Yep.
then, you do realize the more you evolve, you realize more, of course. But at that level, I guess, when I was 18, 19 years old, when I first started hitting the weights, that there's got to be some carryover
Yeah.
to being an athlete and helping your athleticism.
Yep.
And yeah, that's really all it was, man. And you look back at when you were that age and you're looking at what you were doing and you're like, what was I thinking, right? But
All the dumb stuff. Yes.
that's the evolution of our journey, huh?
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. And what I always like to get as well, because I know there's a lot of young coaches. It's a very broad mix that listen to this show. You got the seasoned vets like us, been
yeah,
doing it 20 or more years, and you got a lot of young coaches too. And so I
right,
love to speak to them, and I
right,
would love to hear just about your journey and your path in the industry, and kind of
yep,
like, hey, how do you go from, hey man, I think I want to do this. I'm banging weights. I
yeah.
love basketball. Talk to me about your career path and maybe some of the stops you had along the way.
Yeah, for sure. Like after finishing college, really the first place I applied to, a big box commercial gym here in Canada. Um, I was there for 3 years and I did good. I sold $100,000 in training my third year there as a trainer.
Oh wow,
Uh,
yeah,
I was just, I was just shy of being nominated trainer of the year. And they had me, there were two openings for other positions. Like I'm from Hamilton, Ontario, which is the same city as Shea, Gilgis Alexander's
yeah,
from. Shea's killing it, right?
yeah,
So we're,
absolutely.
we're just about 40 minutes outside of Toronto. So, in this, one of the cities in between Toronto and Burlington, Toronto and Hamilton, where I applied, which is where I live now in Burlington, Ontario. Um, the first gym I applied to, I got in. So for 3 years, I'm there. I'm selling some training. They wanted to mold me into becoming a fitness manager at a Hamilton location
Right.
and another location as well, a little more north. And I didn't want to manage other trainers and make sure they were hitting their quotas and all that. I'm still trying to evolve as a coach, as a
Yeah,
trainer,
sure.
right? So I didn't want to really get into all that. And then, just commercial gym and with the business model they have, it just got a little challenging on my end. So, what was great though, I had a parent that, an athlete, a client of a parent that had a kid that he said plays baseball. And
Yep.
he's like, do you mind if I bring my kid in to train with me? And I'm like, yeah, bring him in. And it just was so fun, man. It was
Yeah.
so fun, so organic with this young 13, 14-year-old baseball. And then I just realized, man, this is what I want to do. I want to
Yeah.
work with youth. And so sure enough, I left the company, started my own thing, got in the private sector, working with General Pop, working with some athletes. I had a coach I worked for at his facility that gave me four NCAA hockey players that he was working with. I
That's
worked for
cool.
here. And that was really my first, like, yeah, big, like, okay, I got some studs here now. What am I going to do with these guys, right?
Right. Right.
So that also at the same time led me to working with another Burlington native and Brady Heslip. Brady was just, if it wasn't for Fred Van Fleet getting the contract with the Toronto Raptors, it would have been Brady's. And that I had some intel with someone who was a coach with the staff.
Yeah.
Brady was not just working with Brady, working with RJ Barrett when he was in grade 8, grade 9. His dad was coming, bringing him in to train with me.
Yeah.
RJ's dad's the general manager of Canada Basketball. So one thing
Oh,
led to
wow.
another. Now I kind of got my foot in the door with Canada Basketball, and I met Charlie Weingroff, who at the time was the head strength coach, and knew Charlie, followed Charlie's work from previously. And then, yeah,
Sure.
that was really my unofficial internship in that I was
Right.
assisting Charlie for a couple summers. A few summers I worked with him during training camp before they would take off and go and play. And that led me to working with another coach in Canada Basketball that took a job with a new pro basketball league at the time that was just starting the CEDL. So I worked with the Niagara River Lions for 3 seasons. And man, listen, as much as I brag about this Canada Basketball and this pro gig that I have for 3 years, really since 2020, I haven't been working at that end anymore. I'm just still and always have been working with youth. And that's really
Yeah.
what my passion is. It's just like, okay, some of these experiences I've had were cool. Can I bring some of those experiences down to these guys? Because the reality is most of these players I work with aren't even going to get a sniff at that level, right? So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah, it's just, I'm just trying to be, like when I say this and that I'm to blame with this. I was a very self-isolated kid. I would never like go out of my way to ask questions and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I have no regrets. It's part of my journey. But what I'm saying is like, I never really had a coach that kind of influenced me,
Right.
if you will, until, I started to get these mentors that, we can speak about today that's helped shape me or mold me into my career. But what I'm trying to say is I just want to be the coach I never had for these kids.
Yes.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
No, I
Yeah.
know, dude, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
It's really funny. And I feel like I've talked about this a little bit in the past, and I won't give you like the full drawn out story, but like you, I love basketball, right? Love basketball. It's my favorite sport. All through high school, like 3 out of the 4 years, my first year I played JV, I had a guy, I knew he didn't like me, right? So then my sophomore year, we had different coaches, and it was great. And I got along great. It was one of my best years. And then the guy then became the varsity coach. So my junior,
Okay.
senior year, I'm back to the guy. I'm like, dude, this guy, and everybody has that story, right? Oh, the coach doesn't like me. Like we just really just didn't get along, right?
Sure.
It
It happens, man. A
it
lot.
does.
Then you get egos and
Yeah. Yeah. So
Mhm.
I just don't get along with this guy. And then, man, but every year after basketball, I go to volleyball and I had
Mhm.
amazing coaches there. So that was it for me,
Awesome.
right? It's like I
Right.
want a coach that like draws the passion out of me.
Yep.
And
Yep.
man,
Yep.
it's just like when you have the right coach or the right mentor, everything is better,
That's just
right?
it. And being a walk on, I felt like these coaches were not giving me any chances,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, like coaching can make everything. And I'm sure you've seen this a ton too. I want to be optimistic here, not to get too negative, but
Yeah.
yeah, man, sadly you just see, because I've worked with countless rep clubs and teams in the area, and you get clubs that pay coaches, you get clubs that don't, and then
Yeah.
Johnny's dad stepping in to coach.
Yeah.
And so not only from an inexperienced versus experience level, but
Yep.
I think it was Paul Fabritz I heard said this,
Mm.
and it resonated with me. To be a very good, successful coach, like obviously you got to want to help people, number one.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to have a passion for it, of course. But what I'm saying here is like a lot of coaches I find, like you get a lot of coaches that maybe previously played, which doesn't mean they're going to be a great coach.
No.
And so to have this full kind of package, if you will, again, you got to want to help people. And sometimes they just want to keep their foot in the door with their
Yeah.
sport and be passionate. And do they even really want to help people? A lot
Sure.
of people say they do, but I question if they really
Yeah.
do, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing I like that Paul mentioned, in that you got to be competitive. Like you got to
Yeah.
want to kind of prove some people wrong.
Absolutely.
Not in a negative way, but in the way that you're here to try to help.
Yes.
But going back to the passion part, a great book I read. I just read this recently. It'll come back to me in a second. But there's a difference between passion and purpose.
Mm. Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
I
Like,
like
are
that.
you
Yeah.
feeling like? So I like to preach to my athletes. athletes, like guys, because, again, a lot of them are young. So it's like, yeah, today, in today's day and age, we know we got to work hard. The other part to it, though, is like, do you over deliver? Like, do you do just what's asked of you, or do you do a little bit more?
Yes.
Because if coaches see you do that, man, trust me, you're going to get more opportunity, whether it be
Yes.
playing time or so forth, right?
Yep.
So yeah, you got to do a little bit more than what's expected of you, and that's the sad thing too. I just see so many kids, maybe parents are to blame. They're dropping their kids off so late, consistently late.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want to be that guy, but I got to tell them, like, guys, if this was a job one day in life, like, you would get fired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you really got to,
Absolutely.
like, you got to plant that in their seed in their head to let them know that this is a bad habit.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going off on a rant, but what I'm saying is, yeah, like, you have to, with these young kids, man, it's important to instill just good habits with them.
Yes.
Understand that at the end of the day, do a little bit more of what's expected of you. Yeah, work hard, but going back to passion versus purpose, like, you got to have a skill set, and you got to be able to do something that maybe not a lot of people can really do,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
then on top of that, like, be a good teammate. Do you have a skill set? What's your purpose now? And then, yeah, like, can you just consistently keep coming back and doing that? And when people see that you have that integrity and you
Yes.
have that commitment, man, the sky's the limit, right?
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
yeah, yeah.
Man, okay, so this is great because one of the things I wanted to ask you, and I love guys that are kind of, I don't want to say entry level, but like you're making a huge impact on the youth,
Mm,
right? And it's one thing to talk, we both got friends in the NBA, high level
mm-hmm.
D1 call, that's all great, but
Right.
you're making a real impact with kids that need it. What's your overarching philosophy when you get these young kids? They're malleable, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some things that you want to instill in them? You talked about, hard work,
Yep.
commitment, all those things.
Yep.
Maybe physically, what are some of the things that you're looking to do or the imprint you're trying to make with these young hoopers?
Sure. Well, it's inevitable. We all know, like, every coach on here knows the science to some degree behind developing athletes, in that, there are these qualities that we got to manage.
Yep.
And for sure, I think we can get so deep into the minutia of it all, but, I don't want to just say here we're checking boxes, but
Right.
we really are. Like, we really
Yeah.
are making sure that they're getting some dose or some input of strength, whether that be
Yeah.
absolute strength. Like, how much does a basketball player need compared to a football lineman in terms of absolute strength? Well, those are two different things, but
Right.
there still needs to be some level of input there. And then we just trickle down, right? You got your strength speed or speed strength qualities, reactive strength. Like, basketball players are a very reactive strength dominant athlete, as you
Yep.
know.
Absolutely.
However, like, I think a lot of coaches can make the easy mistake of thinking, well, we got to do more plyometrics. And you know as well as anyone else, like, these players just want to do plyometrics when it comes to
Right.
strength and conditioning.
Right.
And you just got to remind them that, like, your sport is a plyometric. And, like,
Yes.
yeah, we need to dose it in the right controlled setting.
Absolutely.
And then, yeah, like, those are basically your nervous system based capacities we just mentioned there, right? So now when we're getting into just the tissue side of things, like, obviously we have slow twitch versus fast twitch muscle, and knowing how to appropriately train those qualities. But then, the joint and the connective tissue side of things is really what's struck my interest in the last number of years.
Yeah.
Just been from what I've been exposed. And before we started this call, we were just briefly talking about, how prevalent these soft tissue injuries are today.
Yes.
And then, being that we're all in our, at some capacity, we're all sports scientists here, right? Like,
Yeah.
science is questioning the science. So we're always just kind of tinkering with this and see what works and trial and error. And then we can kind of see here now today, I think more than ever before, and this is where I'm excited about the evolution of strength training is, yeah, joint and connective tissue training is a training capacity, and it could very well be an untrained capacity, or there's a blind spot maybe today, if you will, in most standard training models.
Yeah. Was there something that like really piqued your interest here? Like, was there an athlete
like,
that got
straight up,
injured or something? Yeah. Okay. What is it?
Mike, straight up, like, not only mine, array of injuries that I've sustained growing up. But
Yeah.
you're like, I'm like, man, I'm making these guys bigger, stronger, faster. How are they still blowing out tissue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the question becomes again, like, is our training specific enough? Is it owning in on, now obviously, listen, basketball is not a human, it's not normal human behavior.
No,
Right? Like we're
not
on
at
a
all.
hardwood floor, we're wearing invented footwear, like it's not,
Yeah.
we're doing with the same redundant patterns.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, it comes with a cost.
Sure.
No one wants to talk about it but us, right? But we have to remind these coaches, parents, and players that, hey, the elephant in the room here is your day is going to come. Like no one's
Yeah.
retiring from the sport because like they're retiring because they stop playing because their bodies can't keep up with the demands,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So now we can't prevent, we can't reduce. How can we mitigate this problem, right?
Yep. Yep.
How can we maybe put, because that's the crazy thing too, man. I heard this not too long ago. I think these practitioners were talking about it in reference to all the soft tissue injuries in the NFL, non-contact injuries
Yeah.
happening, right?
Yeah.
And really they said that the players that are currently playing in the NFL, like this is a little bold to say this, but it's kind of got some merit to it. I think that these are just the guys that have made it
Yeah.
through the chaos
Yeah.
of this sport and training, and they're still able to somewhat play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus blowing out tissue, and then you don't hear about those guys, but we've heard
Yeah, for
about
sure.
so many players that had these injuries and were never the same player again.
Absolutely.
So again, I think that it's a big exclamation mark right now, if you will, in regard to some things we need to consider, have more conversations about, maybe spend time integrating this style of training, if you will, in regard to whatever time you got. And if it's not a lot, going back to all these training qualities, like if you don't have much time with these players, like we don't.
Yeah,
Right?
no.
Obviously, some more than others. I have some teams I can only train for 30 minutes a week.
Yeah. That's crazy,
What are you
man.
going to do in 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So I might be doing one exercise or one input. Again, that's going to cover all those things.
Right.
And then I might not get them all in. So now it's almost like a block method. Okay, we're going to work on this for a little bit. And then lead into this. But yeah, best case scenario, you have some time. The other part to it too is these players really don't have an off season,
No.
right? So I
No.
think then the best method to work with is a concurrent method where you're just training a little bit of everything. That's why I
Yeah.
love your model, the R7 model, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're making sure you're getting all those qualities in.
Yeah.
An early mentor to me was Mike Boyle, so
Yeah.
they're doing the same thing at Boyle's gym,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Well, first off, you talked about the people that are left over, the ones that make it. Like strength training history here, like people used to talk about like the Bulgarian method of Olympic weightlifting, right? It's just a meat grinder approach, right? You take 1,000 people, put them all on the same program. The 5 that don't blow up in the process, well, there's your Olympic team. And it's maybe not quite that bad in basketball, but hey, man, a lot of it is just survival of the fittest. So
But
I love,
why
yeah.
do you think that is? Like, what do you think another elephant in the room is here?
I mean, you said it. It's like just the amount of games, the amount
Volume.
of time. It's volume, right? Like I have kids, and I try and like think about this logistically, right? Let's just say their season starts for us, October or early November, right? So they do a month of preseason. Then they're into games. Well, they're going to play games at least till March, right? As soon as March hits, either you're continuing to play for your team, or as soon as you're done, your AAU coach wants you. And well, okay, that's
Sometimes they
March.
trickle into one another too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Sometimes they're overlapping, right?
right.
So now we go March to June. And again, here, a lot of the teams, they do June ball. So now that you're back with your high school for a month, and they're not playing like one game, they're going sometimes 3 or 4 hour bus ride, playing 3 or 4 games, coming back, day off, doing that all June. And then you go back July, more AAU. It's like, bro, where is the time to actually develop? Like this is the thing for me. Develop your body, develop your game. And so that's like the message that I try and send. And I don't work with as many youth as you do, but I'm trying to like beat that drum. Like, guys,
Got to, man.
Your coach is coaching tactics. He's
Yeah,
coaching team ball. If you want
that's
to
right.
take care of yourself, you have to have a plan and a vision for yourself.
Hmm. Yeah, like it's just hey, what's amazing is the skill level today
Oh yeah,
is incredible.
yeah,
However, again, the cost is, well, man, we would play multi sports. We would
yep,
have seasons. Like, again,
yeah.
I don't want to be that old head
No,
like
I
to
know I
say
am
that's
too.
you know what I
I
mean?
do it too. Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, and that's the thing that they don't know is that, like, guys, we didn't play as much as you guys, so you have to
yeah.
understand that this will come with a cost. And I don't mean to put fear in them,
No,
but I always, man, I keep it 100. Like, I'm not
yeah,
gonna bullshit, guys. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
It's just, it is what it is.
I
So,
I just remember, and again, I love basketball, dude. I love basketball, but like by the end of the season, dog, I'm ready to get outside, hit baseballs and catch fly
yes,
balls and just mess around,
man,
like
you
be
said it. Just
outdoors
get
for a little.
outside.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So
So,
I'm fortunate enough too that I work with. Okay, so like I'm with two rep organizations.
yep.
Within those two rep clubs, one's in Burlington, one's in the next town over Oakville. Um, and they don't care. There's no conflict of interest. Like at some
Sure.
capacity, we all kind of work together, right?
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
fortunate enough, and this is something I'm also trying to really to help is the community be the community and not so worry so much about we're competing, even though we have
Yeah.
different rep clubs and you know what I mean? Because
Yeah, absolutely.
again, I've been fortunate to work with most of them. Now there's new ones up and coming all the time,
Yeah, sure.
especially today's day and age, right? But again, yeah, for the ones that have been sustainable, I've been fortunate to work with them at some capacity in these years. And again, it's just trying to bring everyone together and understand this. And hey, like, yeah, I think most coaches today understand and appreciate that we need some sort of athletic development, some sort of strength and conditioning program, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah, sure.
But you know, the other part to it is too is just like, are we just going and throwing exercises at them with no rhyme or reason, right? And
Right.
so, thankfully, that's why they consult with me.
Right.
And so going back to, I work with two different rep clubs. One of them, we have a facility. So I have our squat racks.
Yeah.
We got we need there, right?
Yeah, sure.
The other rep club that I share hours with throughout the week, I'm bringing stuff to the gym.
Yeah.
So there's not, right? Like
Pretty Spartan.
you really have to be systematic. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if my earlier career had been nearly as successful with, I guess the point I'm trying to make is like, if you follow good principles, like you don't need much.
Yes.
And I think the pandemic was a perfect example of that, training
Yeah.
people online, right?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely.
you really don't need much. So at the end of the day, we were kind of saying earlier, I was saying, you know, like we might as coaches just nerd out so much over the minutia of it. Like just make sure they're getting those specific inputs that we
Yep.
mentioned earlier
Yep.
at some capacity. However you do that could vary. Like there's so many ways to do it. And I think about, you know, it's like, it's better that they're doing some form of exercise and getting that input as long as it's not costing any joint wear or what have you, than them not doing it at all. Right?
Absolutely.
So again, yeah, that's the tricky part is just trying to fit it in, trying to manage it. You know, you have so much time with them. And yeah, again, like some places I don't have very much equipment, right?
Yeah.
So
Make
how
it
do you
work.
train? Yeah, how do you train absolute strength in a setting where I can't? Man, you know what's been phenomenal? And I saw Schlesinger used to knock these out too, and like wall pushes.
Yeah, I
Like,
know.
can you generate a high amount of force with different variations of pushing into the wall?
Yeah.
Boom.
Isometrics,
Right?
bro.
There, right? And
Yeah.
then, and I mean, yeah, we're not contracting as much muscle because it's static
Right.
versus dynamic. But again, I just want the nervous system to drive, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then obviously there's a abundance of plyometrics and things you can do really that
Yep.
don't require much, if any, equipment. That's just a bonus extra if you got equipment or where you can progress with it, you know, bands, medicine balls, like it's endless.
Yeah.
And then again, going back to the tissue-based capacities, well, when training muscle, we just need time under tension, and we don't need weights or we're, you know what I mean? Like they're,
Yeah.
again, not discrediting, like I love free weights. Like
Yeah, sure.
best case scenario, we would have them, we would use them. But again, I think if you just have good principles, you can get the job done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So something I'm interested in, because if somebody like goes to your IG, right, and they're like, yeah, I think I'm going to use this guy. You're not putting a ton of like, ugh, we're just getting huge in the weight room. There's a lot of focus on mobility and movement, especially with young developing athletes. Do you get any blowback from the higher ups? Are they ever like, oh, why are we doing all this stuff? We just need to get bigger or faster or stronger.
Absolutely. Like
Really? Okay.
on top of those two rep clubs, I do also work with two prep teams.
Okay.
One's a girls team and one's a U19 boys team. And um, so that I'm just saying that. I'm not saying either one of these coaches or teams
Yeah.
are responsible for this, but I just
Yes.
wanted you to understand that I probably work with over 300 athletes a week.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
It's
and
a
and a
big
lot of
pool.
that, yeah, a lot of that is because there's not enough of me to go around with all these teams. So
Yep.
sometimes I have to train two, and I don't love it, but up to even three teams at one time.
Oh, wow.
So I'm more of an instructor now than a coach,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
And I say that because again, like, what could you like now? Equipment becomes even less of a resource, right?
Yes. Yes.
So again, you can kind of get a diverse idea here as to how I got to try to operate this. For sure, yeah, you get coaches that just think, man, like at the end of the day, they just don't understand the specificity. Like getting
Yep.
stronger under a barbell doesn't mean you're going to mitigate an ankle inversion sprain,
Right.
right?
Yep.
So the specificity, that's where I think also it's a big blind spot in our standard model of training today, is that we just think getting stronger is the answer. Stronger is better. It's kind of the
Yes.
quote all the time,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And it is to some, it
To a
is like
degree, it does
to a
help.
degree it
Yeah.
is, but it's like, where are we getting stronger? So,
Yes.
Mike, like we see again, I mentioned ankle inversion sprains. We see, we see a lot of knee stuff going on. Maybe, kind of secondary to that. And of course it depends, right?
Yeah.
But there's major players. There's a lot of major players or a lot of joints that matter, right?
Yep.
So your, your movement practice and maybe your mobility practice, I think, like, again, all of us coaches can agree on this one thing, I hope. We need variability in our training program because your sport isn't providing you with that. So where
Yep.
can we make up for that? And again, we're not playing multi-sports and doing other activities
Right.
anymore. So where do we make up for the variability? And I'm not afraid to say this. Like, I'm very biased towards the functional range systems only
Yeah.
because the system is really kind of an unbiased system. Like, it's more of a thought process rather than
Yeah.
here are the exercises that we need to be doing.
Yeah, sure.
So again, like, where are we putting the specific kind of, instead of strength, we might call it in the system load bearing capacity? Where are we trickling in load bearing capacity training into maybe these tissues that are more vulnerable in the sport of basketball?
Yeah.
Ankles, again, anterior knee, right? Even the
Yeah.
rotational capacities of the knee.
Yep.
And so I think, again, when I give an example of I only have 30 minutes a week with certain teams or certain players, maybe I'm very much going to bias the feet, the ankle, and the knees in terms of maybe our soft tissue training.
Yeah.
Then we can finish off with, because it's before practice, I have them, so I kind of want to get them prepped and primed to go into
Absolutely.
practice better. So we might work on some reactive strength or speed strength qualities before they go into practice. With this one team, I'm thinking of like, I actually started them with that because I think you can still get strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can get strong by using loads of 70, 80%, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when you're young. Like I'm talking about grade 9 boys and girls that I have training at the same time.
You can
So
probably
you can
get less
imagine,
than that.
right?
Honestly, percentage wise, it's not going to take a lot if they've never trained.
Totally. And it's a safer method, I think, because again, the loads are a little more conservative. Whereas, I just busted out the trap bars for them yesterday, and it's like, oh, we're going to start with a few sets here of 5 rep ranges, and then, I might try to push
Yeah.
to eventually acquire a little more absolute strength with them.
Yeah.
Right? But again, man, you just have to make sure that, hey, like, what's like, as you mentioned your question, to answer your question, like, what is your big, like, overlying thing here? is, well, at the end of the day, man, like we have to try to mitigate these injuries the best we can. No, we're not going to reduce or
Yeah.
reduce, or they're going to be there, man. But hey, the thing now that's got to be the message for them is understanding. Listen, no one is going to take care of you but you.
Yep.
Right? Because it's one thing to go and see your whatever therapist, right?
Yep.
It could be chiro, physio, whatever, massage, whatever. Whatever practitioner you're going to see, and they're doing the work for you.
Yep.
Like, we know passive inputs are going to give you passive results.
Yeah,
right?
sure. Sure.
So the thing, like, a part of my journey that I didn't mention yet too is I was kind of influenced with the system to go back to school. So last year I was in massage school. It only lasted a handful of months, man, before I quit. And the reasons why I quit, to be quite honest with you, I'm trying to manage my coaching and school full time, and I just burnt out, man. I couldn't retain the information as much as I would have liked to. Mind you, I was at a top school in the province, and they're over delivering on their information because their board exam pass rates were phenomenal. But you know, I'm shadowing in the clinic for 20 hours, watching these year twos treat their patients, and I'm just like, man, I knew this is not why I got into massage. I didn't want to just massage people. I wanted to come out of it with a license so that, you know, I could better assess tissue and use it within the model of my training already. But you know, to do 350 hours was clinic was the next challenge rolling into the next semester, and I would have even had to reduce my coaching hours more.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I'm almost 20 years now. I finally got to a point where I'm almost turning business away because right. So I had to make the decision. But the point of me telling you that again is it's like, yeah, it's just. I'm an active guy. Like, I believe firmly that we need to use active inputs. And I know that from me learning from great clinicians and practitioners will say the same thing. Like, I'm not rubbing anyone's pain away just by rubbing their boo-boo. Like, it doesn't work that way, right?
Right.
You got to do some work. So again, as I was saying, like, I have to try to have these athletes understand that, listen, you have homework to do.
Yeah.
And everybody's homework is different based off of their situations. Right? Like, what's your current injury history? Are we assessing them from head to toe? Because, you know, I like to ask them, like, guys, because I use the system. So for guys that are familiar with the system, like, we use cars, right? As our movement practice, but also as a part of our assessment to see, okay, what workspace do we have in the joint to move? What capacities do we have or not have in that joint to move? And then, you know, once they start learning this routine with me as a part of their practice, their movement practice, okay, guys, then my next question is, guys, what joints do you find you're moving on your own? They're like, Coach, I'm doing my ankle cars under my desk at school. Okay, cool. You know, they start listing off the one or two ones that that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make the conscious become subconscious. So you have these opportunities in your 24-hour window a day to be able to get these little movement snacks in, if you will. Right?
Yeah.
And you know, that's like the low-hanging fruit. Like, if we can just get them to do a little bit extra on their own, it's so easy to do, it's so easy not to do, right?
Absolutely.
But I challenge them and ask them, like, which joint do you think is the most important joint in the body? And there isn't one, right? They're all equally important.
Right.
So that's what I love about the system and, you know, doing your cars is every joint you're moving from your neck all the way down to your toes.
Yep.
Again, another blind spot, I think, in most training programs is we will only bias certain joints or certain muscles that we train.
Yes.
And we know that if we don't use it, the more we age, we lose it.
Yes.
So what are we doing to continue to keep the hardware that we have? And then the other part to it is, well, we know playing basketball or any other sport will actually take away from your hardware because we accommodate, right?
Yeah.
The more we do this thing. So what are we doing to continuously backfill and be able to keep these ranges of motion?
Yeah.
So, you know, you know this, like, I guess the key thing here is to try not to lose it in the first place.
Yes.
Because it's work to get back.
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that too, because like it's a great question actually when you think about it, like, well, what's the most important joint? Well, if you've ever had an injury to just about any joint, like it's all fun and games until your big toe hurts, right? And now you're walking with a flat foot everywhere, right? And one of the benefits I think of being old like us is we probably accumulated a lot of wear and tear, right? I've had some weird injuries, right? Like turf toe, right? I
Yep.
bruised my heel in high school. You think, oh, that's not a big deal until every time you heel strike, it's
Mm-hmm.
painful. And now
Mm-hmm.
you're shifting that load, right? And
Yep.
changing that stress. So that's a
And
great
what
viewpoint.
and what do we know about performance when pain is present?
I mean,
Drops, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's cool to have, like, again, like you're just, without nerding out and ranting to these players, like there are these key things that they need to understand. If
Yep.
you're going to be involved in this thing for some years to come,
Yep.
then you got to understand, like, obviously we need you to move well fundamentally.
Yeah. Oh,
Knowing the sport, the more you play, it's going to take away from your movement qualities and capacities.
yep.
So I think now it's a better understanding because these athletes do not want to, for the most part, be in the weight.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't want to be doing this training,
Yep.
right? They come into the gym. I watch these kids come into the gym. They play sub-maximal at best, pickup, one-on-one or whatever until
Right.
practice gets going.
Yeah.
Not even playing defense, just waiting for Jimmy to miss a shot. Now I can check it up and you got to go, right?
Yep. Yep.
And anyway, like, so that brings me to another key point. But my main point there was like these athletes have to understand that these times, these little 10-minute, 5-minute windows that you have to prepare yourself are good habits that you want to instill early.
Yep.
And then it's easy to drop whatever NBA player's name on them and have them understand, like, look, this is what they do pregame. They have a routine.
Right.
Now because they just want to mimic them, right? Now,
Yeah,
hopefully
sure.
that'll resonate with them and they can use that.
Yep.
But again, and then there's the other side to it where we know we're human, we're very reactive versus proactive. So like you kind of nailed it on the head, right? Until we do get injured is when you're going to really realize, oh, this is something now that I do have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Right?
just so interesting because you're having the same discussions, right? Like over the last couple of years, I've been asked to like consult for a couple, higher level dudes. They're going to be first round draft picks, whatever. And I'm having the same discussions. Like literally, it's the exact same discussions you're having. And you think,
Yep.
oh, well, yeah, but they're going to be NBA players. Yeah, but they're still sometimes 19 and 20-year-old kids.
Right.
So,
Not to be extreme, Mike, but I will be because again, I
yeah,
don't want to bullshit, and maybe I am a little extremist, but like, again, these coaches, these players, these parents, they just don't want to talk about like the outcome. Like,
yeah,
so at the end of the day, man, like, where do you see yourself after basketball? And do you want to have a body that's mashed up?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Like, I think it's important early to have these conversations
yep,
because there's some sacrifice now, right?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned that because I talk about that a lot. Like, I don't do a ton of like NFL and football, but
Uh-huh.
that's definitely a part of that discussion, right?
Huge.
Because
Huge.
I mean, these dudes are in car wrecks every day.
Yep. Yep.
And
But
so,
NBA too, man. Like,
it is.
we've seen,
It's incredible. It really
isn't it
is.
wild to
Yeah.
see like a player pivot and
Yeah.
blow something out?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Especially when you
So
think how
again,
many times he's done that before.
yeah. So for sure. So again, for sure, load management's become the buzzword for these last number of years,
Right.
and that's it. There's just too many games being played from a young age all the way up into the pros. Not enough recovery, not enough adaptation. But then again, too, we have to question what it is we're doing or not doing,
Yeah.
right?
For sure.
In these settings.
For sure.
So I've been fortunate enough. You mentioned a heel injury. I blew my plantar fascia out
Oof.
about probably almost this time last year. And for a good 7-8 months, like I was modifying pretty much, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
With everything I was doing. My own game, I'm good around mid range, good around.
Yeah.
I'm kind of an undersized post
You got the
player, so
midi.
I've always been around the basket, and middies are good. My threes they were inconsistent.
Yep.
So I'm like, all right, I'm injured now. What am I going to do? And what really brought me down this rabbit hole was I'm working with these because I am on the court, not as much as I am doing the strength conditioning side,
Right.
but I am a liaison at times on the court. So I'm a bit of a hybrid in that regard, and was filling in for a coach that had to step out. I think he had to go coach a game on one of the next courts or whatever. And he's telling these players to go here, there, the other, right? And I'm
Yeah.
watching them shoot the ball, and I just stop the drill. Like, guys, have you ever, besides your dad or your teacher maybe at school, like, has anybody ever taught you how to shoot a ball? All four of these kids at the time shook their head to me, no, right?
That's wild.
Well, that's what I'm getting at, is
Yeah.
all these clubs I've worked with over the years, and it kind of ties into the training realm too, where we just think more is better, right?
Yeah.
In terms of shooting, just shooting more, we coaches think is going to produce a better outcome.
Right.
And if you've got a broken shot in that there's just no alignment, just your physics are off, right?
Yeah.
There's no perfect shot, but you got way too much variability happening
Yes.
here on your shot. That's essentially making it harder for you to get the ball in the net. Anyway, so long story short is I hired Mike Dunn.
Yeah.
I don't know if Mike Dunn's I think he's in the New Jersey area, if I'm not mistaken, but our club had him 2 summers ago for a shooting clinic at our club for a week. Mind you, I was in school all week at the time, so I couldn't make it.
Oh.
And I asked one of the coaches I work with, how was the camp? And he said, 'cause I knew of Mike and of his work prior, but again, I would have liked to have been there. But he said, I was like, what was the good? What was the bad come out of it? He says, honestly, the only real bad come out of it is as soon as the camp was over, all these kids went back to their shooting form the way they were doing it the very next week.
Oh my gosh.
So we have to hold them accountable to keep doing.
Yeah.
So I'm having dialogue with these coaches in that, practice plans. Some don't even have any, which is wild.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they're just coming in on a whim and going for it.
Yeah.
And then the ones that do, listen, if it's important, you gotta microdose these things throughout your practice plan, right?
Yep.
So once, anyway, I consulted with Mike and I paid for his little subscription, and he wants to see your videos of your shot, and that's how he gets back and coaches you. And man, he gets back to you right away. Like he's
awesome.
Solid. And I love the way he coaches it because of the simplicity of it.
Yep.
Again, it abides to physics. It's just, we're trying to make your shot more efficient and easier. The sequencing is what he calls in his shooting. And anyway, man, it helped my shooting tremendously.
Yeah.
So now I'm just stealing his curriculum, right?
Yeah.
Like what I do with all my work, right?
Yeah.
I'm just the best stealer in regards to, I'm not reinventing the wheel here.
Right.
And I've been fortunate with these 2 clubs that they've been giving me hours, just giving shooting clinics and shooting programs to these kids. Now I've gotten it to a point now because I have some of these kids that don't see me for strength and conditioning, but now I can be having these conversations with them, or even fuse a little bit of it. Hey, if I have this time earlier, can you come in and we can,
right.
Yeah. So, because what I think it was Paul George I seen did a reel on this, maybe a year or 2 ago. And obviously he was talking about what 3 fundamental big rock things here do we need to be playing a high level? NBA aside, I think just even these young athletes need to understand that these are the 3 things. Like obviously you have to be able to shoot the ball.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what I'm alluding to is a lot of these kids just haven't been coached how to shoot a ball.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then the cool thing too is what these experts are saying is that these shooting experts are, because we see these kids push the ball instead of getting to a set point and shooting it, right?
Yeah.
And they're really saying the reason why they're pushing the ball is because when they learned to do that, the ball was too big for them and the rim was too high. So that was their strategy right from the get-go.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you got to kind of unlearn and relearn. And if they're young, that's a lot easier to do than maybe someone like me.
Right.
But if I at 46 years of age was able to change my shot up a bit for the better.
Yeah.
Then, right?
Absolutely.
So you got to be able to shoot the ball. You got to be a great athlete. You've got to try to get this thing to be the best athletic version of you.
Yes.
And then you have to stop your man. That's where I'm seeing too, who is a dog on defense?
Right.
Who is up and coming that wants to be a dog on defense? And I don't know if I see that very much today.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think those 3 things really make up, I think, what's going to make you a good basketball player.
Yeah.
And, these kids, they're all so young and they've got high hopes and they all say they want to be pro. But then it's like, okay, like if you want to make a living at this, you have to be in those categories of those three things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
Right?
it. I love
So
it.
anyway, that's just my kind of. I always took pride in playing defense. I wasn't the most highly skilled player, right?
Yeah.
Being now on that this last season, now I've been working on a little bit of shooting with these guys has really made my job pretty exciting and gives me a little bit of novelty outside of the weight room to kind of do something extra. But again, it all ties into the same thing.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's one of the things just as a coach. I think that's why a lot of people, you hear more and more people talk about like burnout, right? And
Mhm.
Andy McCloy and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. But I do think I do think there is burnout in our industry, and I think a lot of it comes when we're not evolving ourselves,
Sure.
right? So like if I'm just going to be the best strength guy
Yep.
forever, like at some point, okay, like you probably know about everything there is to know about strength, right? Maybe there's obscure stuff you don't. But that's where it's like, okay, but if I'm a performance coach,
Yep.
okay, I know a lot about strength. What do I know about speed? What
Right.
do I know about conditioning? So you're a basketball guy. Hey, you feel like you know a lot about movement, mobility, all these physical things that help somebody be better. Now it's like, now can I link that to the on-court development?
Yep.
That's really
Yeah.
cool.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. You're seeing lots of these hybrids now, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
originally, as I said, I was trying to be a hybrid in terms of being a manual therapist slash
Yep.
strength coach. I think it was again Schlesinger mentioned that years back. I think it might have been in conversation with you, in that he was just saying like you're gonna see more of these hybrid sport
Yeah.
slash strength coaches.
Yep.
And it's still sad today that some of the egos and maybe just the insecurities of some coaches that can't see that that's where we're evolving to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like how many I've straight up, Mike, had coaches that I've had relationships with for a long time now, personal relationships too, not just professional. And they'll be hitting me up like, dude, stay in your lane. Like, what are you doing? And
Yeah.
it's just like, I've been doing this my whole life. Like, I
Right.
don't have a say in the party. Like, what do you
Right.
mean? Like,
Absolutely.
and it's
Absolutely.
just so yeah. So whatever. I don't. Hey, that's on them though. But
Yeah, absolutely.
but yeah, and the other part to it, I think that ties into that is all these club coaches seem to complain about the same thing. It's just like, man, I spent a year or 2 years or whatever helping develop this kid, and then they jump ship and go to the next club. And I'm quick to tell them, well, first and foremost, like you have to audit yourself. Like,
Yeah.
are you providing the resources for them? Like, there's a reason why they left, right?
Yep.
Sometimes they think the grass is greener and then they learn the hard way, but right,
Yeah.
there's got to be a reason, underlying reason. But where I was going with that is it's like, well, yeah, they could be. I just tell my players, like, listen, if you want to go and talk to some other strength coach or some other shooting coach and get their input, because maybe they're going to add something that I like, go for it. Like,
Yeah.
who are we to tell them that they've got to stay with us?
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not the perfect fit for everybody.
Totally.
You
Can't
know?
please everyone, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. I got one more topic I want to touch on with you because I think this is relevant.
Yep.
And it's funny because I actually did a pretty big show about this years ago with one of my good friends, Matt Winning. And Matt's like a world record holding power lifter.
Yep.
And so we talked about this idea of modify, don't miss.
Yeah.
But we talked about it in the context of the weight room. Right. And Matt's one of these guys, for a guy I think he squatted like 1,200, I don't know, something ungodly. I don't even know what his best squat was, but stupid numbers, right?
Yeah.
So he's pushed these massive weights, but he's, unlike most of these powerlifters, he's never had a significant like major injury. Right. And he attributed that to modify, don't miss. Right. So, hey, if my back hurts, I'm not going to go back squat heavy that day. Right. Maybe I'll just belt squat. Right. So you modify the session so you don't miss the session. I would love to hear how this applies to basketball, or kind of your viewpoint on this.
Yeah. So when I have, and I don't have it as much as I used to, but with one club I worked with 2 seasons ago, I had this and I thought it was just brilliant. I was paid to be at practice.
Yep.
From practice time, start to finish.
Yep.
I had a segment of time at the beginning. I had a little segment of time at the end. And in between, I'm on the court assisting.
Yeah.
But I was preaching to these players like, guys, if you can't make it because you think you have an ankle sprain and you think I can't do practice, show up anyway. I'll be on the sideline working with you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and again, I don't have that leisure today because I'm all over the place, but I just try to instill that in them. Like, listen, there's something that you can be working on. Like,
Yep.
obviously coaches that are understaffed, they're just going to work with the team and they're not really going to help you on the side modify in terms of maybe basketball skill. But if I can at the very least just have them visualize and see, oh, these are opportunities for me to work on, whether it be basketball, whether it be working on their body. Yeah, I just think that message is so key to having them understand. Listen, like, it's a great book I'm reading. I'm reading Drew Hanlon's book right now, Stop Bullshitting Yourself.
Oh, okay.
And we've become masters at bullshitting ourselves. Like, we've become our own worst enemy in that regard. So we do feel sorry for ourselves when we get hurt, right?
Yeah.
We
Of
shut
course.
down and we're just like, oh, I'm just going to sit. If you even decide to show up to practice, usually they're just sitting there watching. What I don't mind too is if players have homework, they bring their homework in and they'll be sitting at the score table doing their homework or whatever, right?
Right.
So however you modify, there's just got to be something we're doing here instead of sitting there feeling sorry for yourself or just sitting at home doing nothing, right?
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
it's really, really interesting you mentioned that because one of the things that I find, because I think the unique kind of niche that I have filled is I'm not a PT, so I don't do true rehab, but I'm
Yeah.
not like your prototypical, oh, let's get huge in the weight room
Right.
strength coach either, right? I kind of like
Right.
blend and kind of run the middle of that. And so one of the things that I've always tried to do is, hey, look, we can always do something, right? We can always do something. And sometimes, hey, like the psychology after you're injured is, woe is me. I don't want to do anything. Maybe it's just me. Hey, man, let's get up. Let's do something like changing your physiology, which then will
Yep.
change your psychology,
Sure.
right? And hopefully speed this thing back up.
Sure.
And I think that's something that we need more of, right? It's
Right.
not just,
Right.
oh, woe is me. I'm sad. I can't do anything. It's like, no, let's focus on what we can do.
Totally. Well, I like that you're humble. You've always been humble, Mike. I appreciate that. I like that you're humble though, and you're like, I'm not a PT,
Yeah.
but you kind of are.
I think most
You
of
know?
us, if you understand training,
That's it.
we're gonna bleed into that space,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not like
Right.
there's this clear line in the sand. PT is done. Okay, strength coach. Now you
Right.
take over. The best of both. Try and see each
Yes.
other's perspective, and hey, how can we collaborate on this? How can we
Yeah.
work together? Make it seamless, make it streamlined, so ultimately the athlete gets the best result.
Correct. Yeah. And for me, that's what's been fascinating too, working under these practitioners under the FRS system is they're all from the same region as me too, like
Yeah.
Spina and Shivers. They're from here. My good friend and mentor Dana John Heimbecker, who traveled the world with them teaching courses, was really one of the first ones to put me onto it. And working at Canada Basketball, Charlie Weingroff said, "Hey man, these are 3 courses that I recommend you take." Took them all, and then FRC was one of them, and that just led me down a rabbit hole of taking all their courses.
Yeah.
And then I like though too. I want to throw in there that Charlie mentioned. Hey, also like if you can, you got the money and time to do it. Take a course that you don't really. You're like, I don't know, man. This is a little woo woo, right?
Right.
Like, go and do it anyway and see what you think, right?
Yes.
So I was able to do that. Man, I've taken so many courses, right? But it's like,
Yeah.
my point again, though, in regard to that is the system has exposed me because these are practitioners. And even though I'm just a strength coach and I don't have a license to put my hands on people, there are still strategies in which we know we can use that abides the science that we can guide tissue to heal.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
And these are active inputs that we know will help increase the connective tissue architecture,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Add load bearing capacity. Having the player and understand now, the athlete has to understand, like, it's a mathematical equation. You blew the tissue out because you couldn't tolerate the force that went into the tissue at that given
Yes.
time. So now we need to bump up the capacity to be able to withstand that. Right?
Yep.
So again, like going back to Charlie, that's been his motto for years: is training is rehab, good rehab is training,
Yeah.
good training is rehab, right? So yeah, we kind of are, but there's still rules and regulations we got to follow
Yes.
within licensing and whatnot. And I know it's pretty stern in the U.S. It's pretty
Yeah.
stern in Canada. I think there's a little more leeway here in Canada than maybe in the U.S., but it is what it is. Yep.
Yeah. 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 I've just always tried to kind of, I think the biggest part of all that is kind of knowing what your limits are,
Yeah,
right?
and when
Not
to refer out, right?
absolute. That's the
Yeah,
biggest thing, right?
right.
Like you can't know everything. I mean, I
Mhm.
wish I could, dude. I've tried,
Yeah,
but
man.
you know as well as I do, the longer you're in this, the more smart people you're around, the dumber
Hmm.
you feel,
Yep,
which is a blessing and a curse.
yep,
Uh,
absolutely.
but yeah, you gotta keep pushing yourself. Okay,
Yeah,
big question time, my
yep.
friend.
All right.
If you could alter the space time continuum and give young Jeff Aldham one piece of advice, what would it be?
One piece of advice would be to be more curious.
Yeah,
Like, why Kobe Bryant is my GOAT is like the dude left no stone unturned,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
He was known to ask the players before him. He was just never afraid to ask. So again, I kind of mentioned earlier, that's the way I was when I was a kid. I was very self-isolated, and to one extent, I don't really have regrets because it made, once I found and sparked my interest in this,
yeah,
then the lid was off, right? Then it
yeah.
was,
Sure.
but even still, like that was a journey. That took some time. Like, um, I really looked up to Charlie's work,
Yeah,
and then when I went and worked with him, like it was kind of intimidating to
yeah.
work with
Sure,
him. And
sure.
I remember even an earlier client I had back in that Fox commercial gym I worked at, like I started to work with an osteopath, and I'm like, dude, like, and he was a former football player and football coach, and I'm like, I don't know anything. What do you want to work with me for? And he's
Right.
just like, well, I just need the accountability, man, and we
Mm,
all do, right?
yes.
So yeah, maybe in my earlier career, just to maybe find that mentor, find that coach, if you will, instead of just being so insecure and self-isolated.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Last but not least, we've got our lightning round. So 4 to 5, fairly short questions. Your answer can be as
cool.
long as short as you like.
All right.
Number one, I'm really interested in this. I think I might know the answer, but I'm not sure. Who is your favorite player to watch right now?
Right now,
Yeah.
man, just I don't think I have one. It's just like my people.
Okay, okay.
You know what
See,
I
I thought
mean?
you were going to
Like
say Shea. I thought you would say Shea.
Shay's been, yeah, like all these guys in the league, like there's a couple of them that there's a few of them still in the league that I've worked with when I was at Canada Basketball, but like like I'm just there assisting. It's not like they were
Yeah,
really
sure.
my guys. Kelly Olnick was a beauty, man.
Mm,
Working with him, I did a little
yeah,
bit of work with him. Great guy. So, it's great to see RJ's back home in Toronto,
yeah,
and his strength coach that travels with him. I talk to often. So yeah, I just love going when I have time,
yeah,
especially because where I live, like we have facilities where games are being played often. I go and I watch my players. Now I sit with the teams I can go with. I've invested into a couple more teams than most of them just because they also train with me privately.
for sure.
Um, so I'll go to their game. I sit on the bench, Mike, and I film the game.
Oh, yeah.
So at the end, I chop up a reel and I post it, and they love that, right?
Oh, of course.
But I'm actually like, no one else is doing video like
Yeah, no, I know.
at this level. I'm saying, like,
Yeah,
I'm a
for sure.
video coordinator.
Yeah, no, I know.
So if the ref calls something, I go back and see it, and it's like,
Mm.
trust me, I don't want to be like, being a referee is the hardest
Oh, it's
job in the
awful.
world.
Yeah,
I think I did it for intramurals in college as a little part-time gig, and I didn't
yeah.
do it for very long because it was just
It
like,
would
man,
suck.
like, yeah. So hardest job in the world, but yeah, that's kind of been cool to do that for my guys, and then just to see like, the outcome of these plays. But yeah,
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, cool. Number two, what is your? It's not really too early now. Do you have a prediction? NBA Finals?
can't say I do. You know why? Just because you know as well as anyone, man, anything can happen.
Yes. Yeah. I
Look at
mean,
what's happened to Dallas.
oh, I know. I know.
Crazy. We've
Yeah.
never seen that before, where they might have to forfeit games.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad. It's bad.
Right? So I don't really know, man. It's cool to see how Golden State's been rolling since Jimmy got there. And,
Yes.
man, honestly, I've been watching a little bit of college basketball, and that's what excites me.
Yeah.
It's just so much more of an exciting game, and it's just more, it's more basketball.
Yeah. It's more balanced for sure. There's only so
Totally.
many threes I can watch guys chuck,
That's the
you know?
challenge today, right? And
Yeah,
we're
sure.
seeing it even at a young age too, which goes back to my point where it's like, all right, if we're going to be chucking up more shots, you got some work to do in your form of your shot. Like,
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
so
Yeah,
yeah,
especially.
that's just my guys, man. I'm just so invested into my players. It's like, if I have the leisure to watch a little college ball or NBA, I might, but
Yeah.
not nearly as much as I used to, right?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What
Number
do you
three.
think? What can I ask what
Oh,
your
dude.
prediction is though?
No, because I have no clue. I talk about this with the guys that are in right now. I'm like, I have no clue, right?
Yeah.
OKC, yeah, they look great, but they're still young. Okay, LA, maybe they were hot. Now LeBron's injured.
Right.
Boston probably it's hard to go against.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know.
Cleveland's
I was going
hot.
to say that too. Yep.
Like Boston's
Yep.
got the pedigree. They've won one, but I don't know,
Yep.
man.
Hey,
I don't
any
know.
one or two injuries to some key
Yeah.
players can make a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I also say, I don't know, man.
Yeah. Who's healthy
Yeah.
and hot going into
Yep.
April?
Yep.
That's
War
what
of
it comes
attrition,
down to.
man. Yep.
It is. It is.
Mhm.
Okay. Number 3. If you could give one piece of advice, or like, let's say you have all of your 300 kids in
Yeah.
a room at once,
Mhm.
and you get 30 seconds to a minute to give them like a soundbite that's going to resonate with them. What advice are you going to give them to get the most out of their body in their game?
Get off your electrical devices a solid hour to 90 minutes before you go to bed.
Oh, okay.
Who is doing that?
Oh my gosh, not many.
And we could be guilty of that too.
Oh,
Like,
for sure.
I try to live by that, but man,
Yes.
like it's like, yeah, I think that, that's kind of the pandemic, if you will, in which we're heading in is just like, yeah. So sleep,
Yeah, recovery, man.
your morning routine, can you get sunlight in your eyes first thing in the morning?
Yes.
Yeah, it's just, we're so like performance and training based, and these athletes and parents, players, coaches just need to understand, man, like, what are you doing outside of the gym
Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you.
is the big thing, right?
I've got this huge like flow chart, right?
Yeah.
And at the end, it's all the cool stuff, right? It's like speed, elastic strength, reactive strength. At the
Probably
very
started
beginning,
with that stuff too, didn't you?
yeah, exactly. That's where we all
Yeah.
start. But
For
then
sure.
now the start is foundation, which is like
Mhm.
sleep, recoverability,
Mhm.
nutrition, all the things that set the foundation for all of the other things. But
Yep.
nobody wants to talk about that because it's not sexy.
Do you track your sleep at all?
I do. I've
You
used
do?
Sonora
Yeah.
for like 5 or 6 years
Oh,
now,
cool.
easily.
Yeah. I'm one of the founding members of Whoop, so I've been with them forever. But
Yep.
yeah, when you are able to objectively measure your sleep, you get such a better understanding, and it's interesting. You can have these conversations with in regard to like it varies on
absolutely.
any given day, right? And
Yes.
and how cool it is that if you know you're going to be sleep deprived in some days ahead, like you can bank on that before you go into that
Yes.
situation, right? Like
Yes.
just like calories, like if you're exerting more calories on a certain day, you need to eat more calories on that day, like
Yes.
so.
So have you? Okay, I don't want to get
Yeah.
totally off the rails here. Have you ever heard of this Nick Littlehales guy?
Say again, Nick.
Nick Littlehales.
I don't think I have.
I'm gonna post it in the show notes.
Cool. All
He's
right.
got a book. It's called
Yeah.
like The Myth of 8 Hours of Sleep. But this
Oh,
is his
beauty.
whole thing, right? He talks about sleeping in cycles, 90-minute cycles. But hey, look, there's sometimes you're not going to get 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep for whatever reason. Okay, so hey, you're going to get 4 sleep cycles. His goal, I think, is like 35. So 5 times 90 is 7.5 times 7 days a week. Anyway, hey, if you know you're only going to get 4 one night, that's fine. Where
Right.
can you bank it on the back end? Can you get 6 sleep cycles another night, or can you get a nap someday this week?
Mhm.
And it just really shifts your mindset, because some people do. There's a term for it now. I forget what it is, but there's a term for people that are like obsessed over their sleep and their sleep scores. And
Well,
so
that's
they
me.
like, yeah, 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 but
Besides, I
to a
have a
fault,
life around
to
it.
a fault, right?
Sure.
So it's like, hey, man, if you're only going to get 4 sleep cycles or 6 hours of sleep at night, okay, great. Where are you going to make up for that over the rest of the week? And
Right.
so it makes
Right.
it way more like manageable. You don't fret over this one night. You didn't get
Yep.
great sleep. Hey, you got 6 other days over the rest of this
Yeah.
week.
Yeah.
How can you fix it from there? So,
Yeah. It's been profound. Like, right? Like people think that when you close your eyes and when you open your eyes is how much sleep you got.
yeah, no.
And that doesn't work. Like there's some time, right?
Yeah.
You almost got to subtract an hour off of what you think.
Yes.
And then, I mean, I don't drink alcohol anymore
Yeah.
just because it only takes 1 or 2 drinks to disrupt my sleep. And,
Oh, yeah.
and so,
No, I get
yeah,
it, man. I
it's
get it.
key. Big key. Those are the low hanging fruit right there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sleep, nutrition.
I love it. Okay, one more. What's next for Jeff Aldham? What are you working on? What are you excited about? Anything?
I'm really excited about some potential opportunities coming up that I can't discuss in too much detail
That's
just
fair.
because of circumstances. But yeah, I'm really looking to being in more of a setting where I can have more of my teams be in a facility that has everything housed in it. So I'm not traveling as much.
Yeah.
And yeah, just hopefully I can continue this fused basketball coach, however I'm involved, shooting, whatever, with my strength and conditioning program, and we'll see where it takes me, man. Like I
Yeah.
don't see stopping anytime soon, but again, I know I can't be naive. I'm getting older, so I
Yeah.
have to scale. Man, it's like like you're feeling it, I'm sure, right? Like
Yeah.
just standing on a hardwood floor for a couple or a few hours and coaching every now and
Yeah.
then, demonstrating, like I feel it,
You
man.
feel it a little bit for sure.
Yep.
For
Yeah.
sure,
So
man.
I know that I'm not going to be able to provide as many hours as I can right now in the future, but we'll just see where it goes. I'm sure, man. I'm not going to be far behind. I'll still be involved with this thing at some level.
Absolutely. I love it,
Yeah.
man. Well, Jeff, this has been amazing. Really appreciate your time. Where can my listeners find out more about you and all the great work that you're doing?
I'm just on Instagram. I have no
Okay.
social media team. It's pretty raw and cut. What you get is what you get. It's a combination of training and a combination of basketball. So
Love it.
Aldham Athletic Development is my Instagram.
I love it. Well, I'll make sure I get the link in the show notes. And again, Jeff, man, thank you so much for coming on, brother. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. One love, man.